Nothing my God can't do.
Talking about all things.
Come on.
The big and the small things. Talking about doors you've never seen. Blessings on blessings for you to receive.
Talking about all things. All the
big and the small things.
What we're talking about.
Talking about doors you've never seen. Blessings on blessings for you to receive. Talking about all things.
See what I don't know.
Big and the small
That's a
things.
cancel out what I do know.
Talking about doors you've never
I've seen it do
seen.
great things.
Blessings on blessings.
I've seen it do all things. Come on. Come on, say it now. What people say. Say it again now. Everybody say.
You will keep it.
God can.
God can do all things.
Years later, it was still saying, He's able. Yes, sir.
He's able.
Allow me to reintroduce myself.
He's able.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
I know that he can do it.
He's ready.
He's no way.
Take it with me and say,
He's able.
everybody say,
Oh, yes, he is.
come on, say it with me.
He's able.
Oh, yes, he is.
He can do it.
Everybody say,
Oh, yes, he is.
let me heal my heart.
He can do it. Oh, yes, he is.
Open up your mouth and say, open up your mouth and say, yes, sir. But if I just get your attention, please, listen. There's nothing impossible.
All right, guys, y'all be sure to say hello as you're coming in so that I can see everybody. Big and the small things. All right, there we go. All right, guys, you're coming in. If you would be sure to just say hello so I can see who's out there. Still trying to get used to StreamYard. Good evening, Juanita. Good evening. Ready to see what the Lord has to share tonight? I love it. Good evening. Listen, as y'all are coming in, if you would be sure to share with others as well on tonight. I know it's Wednesday in Bible study. Hey there, Fred. How are you doing? Good to see you tonight. All right, y'all come on in. This is our relational podcast for tonight. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Even I know it's going to be conversations around singleness, but I think it's just going to be relationships all together. So I think everybody's going to enjoy a little bit of it tonight. So as you guys keep coming, if y'all would be sure to share with others and invite them in. Maybe this will be their first time joining in with us, but I guarantee you it's gonna be worth it all. All righty. All right, y'all come on. Yeah, keep sharing, keep posting, whatever you need to do for me so that I can just see that who all's here. That would be great. Okay. Y'all fixing to go? All right, we'll be getting started in just a few minutes here. Easy.
There's nothing impossible. All things are attainable. Nothing my God can't do.
All right, guys, I want to welcome you guys into our time together tonight. We're going to be talking about singles. Let's talk. We're going to pick it up from the conversation from last week. For those of you that were able to join in with us, I want to invite you guys back in again. Y'all, I was normally I think I had a little bit more light last time, but we'll work with what we got tonight. So, all right, we're gonna give maybe just a minute here, and we'll get started. We're gonna be talking about singles. Let's talk, but we're gonna talk a relationship. Um, I think something that may be helpful for everyone, where we talk about compatibility versus chemistry. I think that's going to be a good one. I think it'll be good for married couples as well, to kind of get that, you know, I don't know, conversation going again and kind of get that fire lit back up under y'all once again. So that's what I'm hoping that will happen anyway. All right. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. For those of you that are coming in for the first time, my name is Marilyn Bailey Pettigrew, and I am the host for Relational Real Talk. For those of you that are first timers joining in, I want to welcome you guys in every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Right here on Facebook Live. We are streaming through StreamYard, but we are actually Facebook Live. And I want to invite you guys to come on in. For all of you that are going to be out there in YouTube land, I want to welcome you guys in as well. I hope that you will find the message that's going forward tonight something that will be very beneficial for you. And I would probably recommend that you get you some paper and get you a pencil and something to jot some, information down. Or you can just, listen to it tonight and then maybe go back and listen to the replay once again. Good evening, Christopher. You can go in and listen to the replay and then go back and take some notes. I guarantee you the information that's going to be shared tonight is going to be worth you revisiting all over again. Amen. Well, we're going to get started. Last week we came in and we were talking singles, let's talk, but we talked about the seasons of preparation. And I think many of you probably may have found yourself, in that place where you're wondering, am I really ready for, what it is that I may be asking for. And I think a lot of people are wanting to be, in relationships, but you want to make sure that whatever it is that you are, believing God for, that you are in the right position to receive that, like for instance, in order for you to receive something, you got to have your hands out. And in order to have your hands out, you got to be expecting something to come back to you as well. So when you extend your hands out, that's saying, God, I'm ready for what you have for me. And what we were doing some checks and balances with that. One of the things that we talked about was making sure that you have your personal growth and identity, knowing exactly who you are. And then also making sure that you are relationship ready. And that involves your emotional maturity, making sure that you know your standards versus your expectations. And then also the power of wholeness, what that means to cultivate, this space where you are, you being complete in who you are before you try to bring other people in your life. And that means knowing what you want. You've taken some time to figure out who you are in this season. If you've gone through separation, divorce, you're not the same person that you were before. I promise you. If you have been one, hey, Miss Carrie, if you have been one that's gone through, just finishing school, whatever the case may be, you're not the same person. You're filled with wisdom and knowledge and, trying to move forward with your career. So a lot of it is making sure that you have the power of wholeness upon you before you bring other people in your life. And then we talked about making sure that you have spiritual and practical preparation as well. That has a lot to do with dealing with your value system, knowing exactly what it is that you believe in. I've always heard this saying, if you don't know what you believe in, anything will do. And a lot of time, that's where a lot of people are getting you caught up. Good evening, Miss Carrie. That's where a lot of people are getting you caught up at, is because we don't always know what it is that we want in life. So you want to make sure that you have that practical preparedness. And that's even your faith and relationships. What is it that you believe, And when you meet someone, or if you're, whatever you're doing, you're going on a job, you are, pursuing, your new career, whatever the case may be, you want to know who you are, your faith, your relationship. And then your faith is, saying that we just don't do what everybody else does. And you got to stand firm on that, because these days, they're mixing a whole lot of things up together, politics and, just, I don't know, different cultural values on jobs. So you got to know exactly who you are. And then also building some healthy habits, also making sure that you start developing financial responsibility. You understand what strong friendships are all about. And then you build some solid life routines, knowing who you are, what it is that you want to do as well. So I want to welcome everybody in. Tonight, we're going to be shifting gears as we go in and talk about another conversation piece as it relates to compatibility and chemistry. And though those two kind of sound the same, they are not the same. When you start thinking about who I am and what I'm, trying to connect to, you got to make sure things are you're compatible, and then make sure that there's a good chemistry, and that has a lot to do with not just you personally, but that's anything that you do. You're bringing children into, whatever environment. You want to make sure that's a good chemistry for children to be it need to be kid friendly. If you got kids, you need to make sure you get with people that are kid friendly. That's even if you move it into a neighborhood, you want to move into a kid friendly neighborhood. If you have your aging parents that are with you, you want to make sure that there is right chemistry that's there, the compatibility, understanding that, hey, I come with a package deal, and package deal ain't always just your children. Sometimes it's your aging parent. That's especially if you've gotten a lot older. And there are some parents that had their children a lot older, and the kids are having to, step up in some roles, at an age to where normally they would be, kind of pursuing some other things in life, but they've also, kind of put some things in place. I'm not going to say they put their life on hold, but they put some things in place where they can possibly have an exchange to where grandparents are coming in to be with you in exchange for them helping out with the children also. So you want to make sure that there are a lot of things that are chemistry related and compatible as well. So let's kind of talk about this a little bit here. Once again, I want to welcome everybody in to Relational Real Talk tonight. We're going to be talking singles. Let's talk. And I think it's really going to be a great conversation for tonight. So let's start off by talking what that means to have. What's the difference between chemistry and compatibility? Let's talk about that first. Chemistry and compatibility, they are very, they intersect in relationships, but they represent distinct elements within it. And, there's a way that they all play out in, the world that we're living right now. So if we talk about chemistry, we are referring to, like, say, for instance, to a spark. You got a chemistry for something. You want to look for there to be some type of a spark or instant connection, a feel that you have for someone, whether that be emotionally. You can have an emotional connection. You can have a physical connection. You can have an intellectual connection. You can be attracted to them intellectually. And it's a feeling it's exciting and it's effortless, to be honest. That's when chemistry has met you at the door. That's like, y'all, I say this is relationships, but it's not just in the dating area. This is when you are connecting with, you're looking for the right job, or you're looking for the right neighborhood, or you're looking for the just, right mate or whatever. You want to make sure that there are different elements of connection that's there. It needs to be an emotional thing. We feel, for one another. We have emotional intelligence, It's not like, you got all smarts, but you don't know nothing about people. we don't have a chemistry there. You're real standoffish, and you don't care for kids and different things like that. That's not gonna go well with you with that kid, because you could tell from the vibes of the individual. You could tell from the vibes of children also when somebody's not a good fit for you. And then there needs to be a physical chemistry as well. That physical could be outwardly. It could be they could have an instant attraction to you. You may be just that right skin color, or that right height, or you could be, you just got that you just, that package that comes together. You just got the kind of chemistry when they walk up to you. It'll be a little thing like, how it is sometimes when you need your space, and they know how to give you space, and they don't bombard you, like walking all up on your face, talking all up in your face and stuff like that. There's a chemistry that says, hey, I know how to put boundaries that are there. I know how to feel an attraction for someone, but at the same time, respect them all together. Another thing is, if you think about it, just imagine meeting someone who makes you laugh a lot. That's a chemistry right there all by itself. Somebody that makes you laugh, and y'all seem to just, really have fun with each other. And sometimes it could be something that's uncontrollable. Y'all may share even instant, I don't know, how it is. Y'all are matching, how sometimes y'all are completing each other's sentences, or you are thinking alike. Maybe y'all have, maybe where I grew up from the same familiar area. That's a chemistry that comes in relationships. And it's good to have that gets the butterflies moving, and it gets you to feeling good, and makes you start thinking about, oh, this may be a connection. And then there's also an unexplainable magnetic pull. That's that chemistry. It's like you want to, I want to find out more about this. I want to connect with this a little bit more. That's just chemistry. Another thing is when another thing you could think about with chemistry, like say for instance, if you walk in a coffee shop, and within a couple of minutes you start talking to somebody for hours. Y'all, I've done that before. Not walking in a coffee shop or anything, but I have had some instant chemistry with people, male, females, people on the job, people in relationships, and we talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. It's some type of connection that you have. It's almost like you just can't get enough of, conversating with them. You wake up the next morning, you're all excited about it. You can be excited like that on a job. I don't know if y'all know it or not. It's the same thing in your church setting too. You can have that kind of chemistry there. Chemistry creates what we call the butterflies in the belly. And that's the thing that often fuels, the initial interest that's there. That's that thing that you always related to Jesus and John, when Mary and Elizabeth were pregnant with Jesus and John, and there was a salutation in the belly, or there was a leaping in the belly that took place. That's chemistry. Chemistry means we got something in common with one another. It's just something about, I can't put my finger on it, but every time I talk to them, it makes me feel like, something important. Now, when it comes down to compatibility may be just a little bit different from that. They're similar, but they're a little bit different. Compatibility has to do with how well your lifestyles gel together, maybe where you grew up, the way you grew up. Like I would probably instantly be attracted to somebody that came from East Texas, because we had something in common. It makes the conversation very easy. It could be your values and the way you align your goals. Maybe y'all have something in common. Maybe y'all both went to school for education, and you got something to talk about. Or, it could be that you guys were raised up. Maybe y'all were raised up in the same area, and then you end up, moving to where you are, and y'all had those things in common. That's a compatibility that's there. It's also built on mutual understandings, and some things just are not, you don't have to explain a whole lot. We just understand one another. After you talk to people for a while, you'll get a feel for who they are, and you get a understanding. Now, I think maybe the first few days that you meet people, maybe a little, you want to test the waters or whatever. But after a while, you look for compatibility, even when it relates to consistency. And what it does, it builds trust in there. When people are very consistent with things, or say, for instance, if you're on the job and something kind of got off course or whatever, and when y'all did connect up with whatever the project was, you guys had a instant, like, hey, I've been working on this particular thing. You're waiting on certain pieces to come together. You start thinking about, you didn't have somebody waiting on something. You knew that these pieces were needing to be connected in, and so you even have that thing of compatibility, like the way we reach out to one another. Like there's a lady on my job. I thank God for her. She reaches out to me every morning. And today we had an opportunity to do our first book club study together. And y'all, we did a book study. Now, let me kind of take this back. This deals with this chemistry first of all, and then the compatibility. It had to have been something that she saw in me. I got a chance to meet all of the admins when I first came there. Some people that met you, they found an instant attraction to you, and y'all may have found it, but y'all never did reach out to each other or anything. But you kind of stayed on their mind, and then all of a sudden, the one day they started reaching out, and then they kept reaching out and kept reaching out. It's something to it. You just can't figure out what it is. And then finally, we came in a little bit closer to where I made an initial move to, say, hey, why don't we get together for lunch sometime? Or she lives in Kentucky. I live here. So we have to do virtual lunches. So we were compatible with that. I think we were both looking for the same thing. So we were like, yeah. And she said, well, maybe if we can do this book club together. There's a book by Brene Brown. She started, speaking my language with the people that I'm used to listening to. And so I was automatically interested and she said, well, let's get the book together. Y'all, we did that book today. If you have not gotten, let me get this book. It's called, I thought it was just me, but it isn't. This book right here by Brene Brown. Don't just get the book, get the Audible too, so you can listen to it. When I tell you she breaks down this thing called shame. You know how we're talking about right now, overthinking in morning motivation? She went in to go in a little bit deeper and break down why some people are not connecting very well, or where there's been some breakdown. And she said this thing called shame that's in there. Oh my God, that thing took me on another pathway of just looking at things. I think I'm going to do my lesson next week on that. It was so good. And I thought about, even when we sat down and we started talking, I said, yeah, we got some things in common. I don't know her story. She doesn't know mine. But the only reason we're connecting like we are is because there is something that God wants to do. And I can tell when it's a God connection too. There's something that God wants to do, but I'm not going to be in no hurry. I'm going to wait on God. I'm going to let him, because, you need to know who sent for you. Before you start getting involved with people, you need to know who sent for you, because sometimes the enemy can send for you too and distract you. But if you start waiting and you look for this thing called compatibility, what it'll do, it'll build a deeper foundation between the two of you. And the first thing that it builds is truth and trust and respect. When compatibility is there, we got chemistry. It's something we like about one another, but there's a compatibility that's going to come in as well. And what you want to do, you want to wait for that. For example, like if it's partnership, if you and your partner both prioritize healthy living, or communicate openly, or support each other with, your careers, you create lifestyle. That's what we mean by compatibility. It's not just one wanting something from the other. That's why I say, see who sent for you. And if it is a one-sided situation, 9 times out of 10, it's going to fit one, it's not going to fit the other. That's not compatibility. If what we got going on is just benefiting you and it's not benefiting us, that's something that's going to be a train wreck after a while. We call it usury. Sometimes you can have chemistry with people, You can have familiar spirits with people, but on the other side, it could be usury also. So you want to make sure that we have a junction that's going to connect with each other, that's going in the same direction. And this, what it does is it brings in a feeling of cohesiveness. And then I think spiritually, it brings in stability. Y'all, one of the things let's talk relationships, singles. Let's talk. Let's talk about that. When it comes down to seeking a mate, or finding that life partner for yourself, or something like that, you want to not only have that feeling of cohesiveness and stability, you want to go back and ask God. Yeah, you can feel good about a thing, and it's like everything is lining up well. It looks like we moving in the same direction. But I would always say, before you make another step, always ask God. Ask God, did he send that your way? And if he did, is it for a season, a reason, or a lifetime? And if it is for a reason, the reason is going to start coming up before you. Sometimes people need friendship. Sometimes people need companionship. Companionship is not the same thing as finding your lifelong partner. That could be a temporary thing. Some people are needing help, and you got to stay still long enough to figure out what they come in for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And remember, chemistry and compatibility, they have some similar views, but they are not the same. When it comes down to compatibility, we got to go in deeper and talk about what our views are when it comes down to family. What does that look like to you? You think about it. You meet somebody and both of y'all have children. Okay. I don't need to know what's important just for your kids. I need to know what's important. I need to share what's important for mine. See, people that come in for a reason, it's always selfish gain. And you don't have to look for devils up on the rock. You just need to have a discerning ear. When it's coming in for just a reason, it's coming in and it's all about them. It's always going to be one-sided. First thing you're going to hear from is me, myself, and I. Always talking about me all the time. Those end up sometimes being a little bit off-centered, because while you may be one that's very passive about certain things, there may come a day where you say, there's some things that I want to do as well. So you have to talk about that stuff, not when the issue arrives. You got to know that these are things that are important to you already. Your children, they are important to you. Your parents, they are important to you. Your job, your career, the things that you want to do in life, those things are important to you. And wait to see, when you talk about those things, how they talk about it. Are they supportive with you? Are they even are they saying something like, mm-hmm? They don't have any comments on it at all. They're probably not tuned in. They coming in for a reason. And sometimes them reason can come in for a season. But most of the time when people come in for seasons, they normally say it, they're not going to be here long. And you have to start listening to different cues or conversation that they have, because they never talk longevity. They don't talk longevity. They don't make you promises. They don't do anything like that. Now, you may be going in thinking that it's going to be for a lifetime or whatever. But remember, compatibility is when we both come in, speak the same language. You looking for something long-term, you need to make sure you're talking to somebody who's looking for something long-term. Many of us women have wasted a lot of time being in relationships to where they never told you they were there for the long haul. They didn't come in talking about things like that. And sometimes you don't realize that until you until you in hindsight and you start dealing with the reality. Remember, I told you we got all that overthinking going on. We're not shutting files down. We're not dealing with things properly. We may be hearing what we want to hear. Compatibility says when these things are important to both of us, you will hear it being talked about. Parents, family, finances, all of that. You'll hear them talking about that. It'll let you know that y'all are moving in the same direction. When they're very vague about things, they're not planning on being there for a long time. They really surprised that you there with them now. So those compatibility can be, you got to look to see if it's for the long haul. That and the only compatibility you looking for, y'all, we ain't got no time to be wasting with people. You look for things that are going to be there for the long haul. Another thing is compatibility is often instinctive. It's like you know it right away. It's not something we trying to figure out later on down the line. Well, maybe we meant for each other, or we'll see. They use words like that. We'll see. I'm talking about after you've been with them for a good while, and they're talking about we'll see. No, you look for people that talk about we're us now. And I'm not saying that 1 or 2 days or whatever, but after a while, after you got the chemistry together, y'all found some compatibility, you want to look to see if these people are moving with you further on down the line. Am I making sense to y'all? I'm going to stay on this thing with singleness. I ain't going to deal with the job stuff. I'm going to talk about singleness so that we all can get on the right track and start attracting the right type of people. Another thing is compatibility requires that you be requires your intentions to be shared efforts so that y'all can strive for the long haul. Thank you, Laquita. So that you can strive for the long haul. I'm listening. I ain't trying to jump on everything. It's like going to the grocery store hungry. Don't go to the grocery store hungry. Don't go into relationships hungry either. You go into the relationship, you may have to go in there with a list. You may need a starter list anyway. Most of the time we go to the grocery store, we got something that we starting off with. Now, we may add to it after we get in there because we forgot about something, but you need to have something that you start off with. This is what I call intentional. So nobody will come in there with ill intentions about things, and you have to open up, begin to start talking about, we got to start striving for efforts that's going for the long haul. When we talk about chemistry can be subjective. It can be. But there are some general criteria that come along with it. You're watching and paying attention. Please do that, y'all. I don't think it takes God long to do anything, but we have to be intentional with what we are pursuing in life. These are some of the things that you look for with chemistry. You look for emotional connections. And that's an important one. Make sure that there's an emotional connection. This is one of those things where you ask the question, does the conversation flow effortlessly? And do you feel understood? Or do you feel like you are seen or you are heard by the other person? And sometimes we'll say things like, do they get you? When you're talking about like for instance, me, when I meet someone or whatever, there needs to be some type of emotional connection that's there. When I'm talking about children, I don't need them bypassing that conversation because I have kids. And when you start hearing people talking about things like, how folk always talk about, you got them grown kids living with you and all that kind of stuff, and they haven't even heard the story behind it. That's not an emotional connection, because I'm already telling you that, such and such is, going or whatever. You want people that have a level of understanding that we can sit down and talk about it. See, remember I told you some people come in there for a reason. When they come in there for a reason, they really not trying to connect to you. They really just coming in for what they need and for what they want. Somebody that has an emotional connection to, they're going to care about what you care about. Another thing is there need to be mutual energy as well, where we feed off of each other's energy in a positive way. We feed off each other's laughter. We become very curious about things. We're passionate about things. Like say for instance, you guys get into a deep conversation, there needs to be a level of compassion that's there. Here, yeah, what you say, in the way. That what Quita said, they in the way. You want to have a level of mutual energy that's there, and we have that compassion or the passion for one another. And that may mean even when one person is talking, the other one silences themselves, that you don't talk over one another. That's mutual energy. You ever had people that talk over you? You're trying to say something, they trying to get their words out or whatever. No, one of us, we're gonna have to learn how to yield the right of way for a right conversation to come in. Another thing is for chemistry is the physical attraction. These are the things that make you decide whether you want to go further with the person. Okay. The physical attraction, that's where you find yourself being drawn to each other's mannerism. Not just they look good, they smell good, they smoke a cigarette, little things like that. You want to check each other's mannerism. I always say, like, right now dating online is a pretty popular thing. So one of the things that's I think it's interesting to me. I need to see the way they walk. And what I mean by that, I want to know if they walk with a level of confidence or do they walk with their head down. You know, that physical. I'm not attracted to low self esteem, and that means you're going to keep picking them up all the time. You're going to keep pumping them up, and you don't want to be walking with no low self esteem on you either. You don't want somebody that's always having to lift you up all the time, and you get on the phone and have a conversation with them, and their spirit is low, and you got to pick them up, and you did real good to pick them up today, then tomorrow they back down again. No, it's something else that's draining their energy. You want that physical connection. It could be even their expressions, the way that they, I don't know, the way they express themselves or the way that they look at you or the way there's a chemistry when people look at you in your eyes and, they find you to be, worth giving their time and attention to, or even just your presence, their presence. I had this one guy that I met one time, and oh my God, this guy, it was like he could not get enough of talk. He talked more than I do. And I'm a life coach. I know why I talk like I do. But when I tell you he talked and he talked and he talked, and y'all, I enjoyed every minute of it. He would talk about his upbringing, his childhood. And later he talked so much that I realized later on he needed a therapist. It wasn't no relationship he needed. He needed a therapist, somebody that would let him talk about the things that were going on. And that can be in any relationship. They find your gift before they find you. They start realizing that's people coming in for a reason. They find that you got a gift, and you can't be making them permanent where they're making you an option somewhere. When they talk, it's like it's always problems going on all the time. And you want to check for those types of things. They're very present. They're good for a minute. And you got to keep looking for consistency with that to see what that's all about. When they talk a lot, find out where that nervousness is coming from, that over talking, and then see what happens when you ready to have a conversation. See will they listen to you. See will they be engaged, or will they keep cutting you off in the conversation? Another one, there needs to be intellectual engagement. That's one that's very important to me. Have a level of intelligence. With your thoughts, do they inspire you? There are some people when you talk to them, it's like, oh my God, they make you want to dream. They want to make you dream further than you've ever dreamed before. They literally inspire you. They stimulate you with conversations. And what it does, it fosters an intellectual chemistry. Y'all know a while back they used to say, you need to be up on the news, and so you can have a well-rounded conversation about different things. I do believe that you need to have be well-rounded, but be more rounded with things that that mean a lot to you. Because you can mess around and get in conversations, and especially if it's politics and things like that, and they'll go hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and they really don't talk about the things that are important. So you want to make sure that there is a intellectual conversation that involves relationship. Okay. I don't need you just to be smart. I don't need you to, have all the right words to say, but I need you to be in a position to where we can talk about, whatever. Y'all, I read up on this article the other day about this thing called the Gen 6 case. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. It was a case that took place in Gin, Louisiana. I think that's what it was, about this guy that was sitting up under a tree. And this is in 2006. And this guy got accused of, him and some other guys got accused of rape or murder or something. And they literally, got those boys into. So anyway, I was having a conversation with somebody about this, and they knew exactly what it was all about. I like that. I like being in conversation. Y'all, it used to be a time when people would talk about stuff like that. I wasn't into that. So I would check out because I didn't have the conversation for. I wasn't even intellectually engaging. But once you get to a point to where you love to have knowledge about different things and be on, up, on what this does is it raises, how it is when you want to upgrade your resume. This provides for upgrading your relationships when you're able to be well-rounded in these areas with the chemistry, because otherwise you may end up being boring to someone. You need to be, be able to be fluid and move in and out of different things. There's also something called comfort and excitement when it relates to chemistry. Chemistry involves in that it's a delicate place that, do I feel safe, and do I feel comfortable around you, and do I feel intrigued, by you? I like that. The comfort part, I got to feel comfortable and I got to feel safe, because if I don't, I'm not going to be the person that God has called me to be. And I'm always going to be wondering, when can I say this? When will they get offended by that? I wonder, how it is when other people take over conversation, you don't know where you fit into it at all. And then the next thing is that you have shared humor. That's what chemistry is all about. Do we laugh at the same stuff? That's me. That's one of my top things. I love to laugh all the time, and I want to make sure that other people are finding, joy and laughter about. I just want to know, do they laugh at themselves? Sometimes, because some of the stuff we've done in life, boy, when we think back on it, it's like I could have done that a lot better. And you want to know, are they real serious, or will they laugh about things? Will they get to the point to where, they find something outside of, problems all the time going on. So a way that you recognize chemistry is that you listen to, you find a sense of a flow of things, now that you've gotten to the place where you're kind of interested in, whatever, find you a good flow. When I call you, do you call back? When I start talking about something, do you want to talk, or do you cut it off? Find a good flow, in the relationship. That's chemistry also building up. You want to, when you start interacting, do they interact with you? Or is it just, you just sit up on the phone, just kind of hold the phone or whatever? And now I say this is toward singles let's talk in relationship, but you really can take it in any area of life. You're looking for people that you have compatibility with and chemistry. You just want to know the difference between the two. And then which one is more important to you? Is chemistry or compatibility more important to you? I think both of them are very important, but I don't know. I think I waver more on the side of compatibility. We have to have something in common, because chemistry can take you only so far. But that compatibility, that's the thing that will determine whether it will be a little bit more long lasting, have a little bit more longevity to it. And you want to be able to check that. Another thing is you look for an exciting energy with people also. You don't want to feel, you want to be able to feel that sense of adrenaline kind of rushing through you, and, feeling good about things. And it's that thing that make you want to get up and do life a little better tomorrow. I don't think that you should live off of that energy. I don't think you should live off of chemistry. because that can change at any time. So a lot of times you got to be able to kind of balance them out, because we can get real laxed in some things. I got good chemistry with this person, but you don't use wisdom to make proper decision about things. Chemistry is not everything. There needs to be some compatibility. I got chemistry with you, but we're not compatible when it comes down to loving God. Chemistry could just be an outward attraction that you have for somebody, the way that they do certain things, the way they walk, the way they talk, or whatever. But do they love the Lord? If you have a relationship with God, you want to make sure that whatever you are mating up with has a love for God too. Do they have a love for family? Another thing is, when you think about the chemistry and compatibility also, those things that are important to you, the things that you've been working on for a long time, your finances, you want to know that they've been working on theirs as well. It does not have to be to where everybody's equal with everything, because life is not always going to be like that. But they need to be working on something. They need to have gotten in a good flow with things, and they need to be okay with talking about where they are. We all got life going on around us, but are we free to talk about the things that are taking place? Are y'all just listening, or is this, am I boring y'all? We're just talking about compatibility and chemistry. We want to make sure that we get the right, information out there with one another. I want to kind of go on and talk a little bit more about the compatibility for a little while, so that we don't get so stuck on chemistry so much. That compatibility is rooted in your shared values. I want to know, do you know what your values are? As faith, family, finances, honesty, your ambition, your fundamentals in life, all of those things. That's your shared core values. When you talking, I'd say listen for it. Listen for feedback that come back from them. There's even a place with compatibility where it's an emotional intimacy that needs to be there as well. And that has a lot to do with being open with your conversation. Y'all, I have learned so much. When I tell you God's got me on a totally different path now, I think that I've never been, because I think a lot of times, a lot of places where I didn't fulfill the promises that were there is because I was shut my mouth up. I didn't open up my mouth. It wasn't that I didn't have the right words or the right thoughts that were there. I just wouldn't say it. But now I'm making sure to, whatever it is that the Lord says to say, questions that need to be asked, I want to ask them on the job. I'm not bowing down. I'm not bowing down to the point to where it's all about one person and not about both of us. There needs to be a level of emotional intimacy that's there. How do we handle disagreements? Thank you, Shirley. How do we handle disagreements? Can we sit down and talk about it? And then say, for instance, you meet someone, or you're in a relationship with someone, and communication is not their strong suit, but they're good at listening. Okay. And you recognize that they don't always respond back right away to what you say, but they do come back the next day to say, I heard you. That's emotional intimacy to me. Sometimes people don't have the right words to say at that time. And I think what has to happen with us is that we've got to give everybody time to be who they are, and for them to find their words. Do you know that some people are so bound by the experiences that they've had in life that they've lost their own words? They don't have words for things. But when you start creating a space of emotional intimacy, you don't have to talk about things right now, but I know that it's a conversation that we need to have at some point. You don't want to push people into having conversation with you. You want that to be a natural flow that's there, because you may start off being the big talker, or they may be. That has been me, especially in my past. Long time ago, I had to have people in my life that taught me how to communicate, that taught me how to articulate. by words and my thoughts. I had a lot of thoughts in my mind, but I didn't know how to, I don't know, sentence structure. I didn't know how to put them in the sentence structure properly. Because sometimes you can just say stuff and you be all out of order with things. There's some things you just can't just say out the top of your head. There needs to be emotional intimacy. You care about, what the other person is caring about. This also involves being on the same page when it comes to expressing and understanding feelings. You need somebody that's willing to, allow you to express yourself. Say what you want to say. You ain't got to hold nothing back. I ain't got no tough skin that bad. Because in order for us to have the compatibility we need to be able to say what we need to say. Another thing is aligning your life goals. Do you have any long-term vision? Y'all, right now, I'm talking retirement. Everything I'm doing, my books that I'm getting ready to do, those books being released, that's retirement. That's moving into those years. And you need to be talking about wherever you are. Some people are just starting their career. Some young people just starting their career. You need to talk where you are. That's why it's always good to find people that y'all are close in age with each other. I don't think and I know everybody do whatever they want to do, but you want to have something in common. 20 years, that may be a big stretch, but I know things, happen or whatever, but you want to be able to reach each other at some point, to be able to understand what they're saying without having to skip a generation to go there. That being aligned in our goals. What's your long-term vision? I'm just getting started. You heading into retirement. All right, how are we going to make that work for us? And it can work, but we need to talk about it. How does that work for us? Your career ambitions, where we going to live, starting a family, being able to be on this, just being able financial plans. Even at this particular point, like in my life, my prayer, y'all already know what I said. I'm praying that this be the year for marriage for me. And I'm standing on that. And so everything that I'm doing intentional. So if I end up meeting someone that they not ready, they not ready. Okay. It goes against what I've asked God for. And so when we talk about aligning those goals up together with one another, I want to know where you're. Well, I'm not there where you are right now. Okay. Yeah, we can't be always wasting time. You're not putting one foot in front of the other. You still waiting on one day. You can't be talking about one day all the time. You got to eventually put a foot forward, even if you just putting your best foot forward. It needs to be something. Another thing is there need to be similar lifestyles, that compatibility. We need to have some similar lifestyle. That means even like our, daily routine. It can't be one person up working, the other one just sitting at the house. That's probably not going to work well. Bye, dear. That's not going to work well. We need to have something in common with each other, similar lifestyle, so that we can mesh well together. So you want to start considering things like your health priority. Do y'all get out and walk together? What's your social preferences? Do y'all get out and visit, or are y'all going to just stay in the house all the time? Similar lifestyles. What do we have with that? And then also, what are your work-life balance? Do we, balance the scales with each other? How are we going to spend time with each other? Y'all, all of this stuff got to be talked about. Singles, let's talk. Season of preparation. And these things that I'm talking to you about right now, they could be you preparing for a mate. But just think about it. If nobody ever said it to you, you probably would keep going on doing things the way that you've been doing it for a while. You want to get prepared for these things like you're in an intentional place that you believe in God to do what he's doing. Even if you're recovering in your relationships, you have to be intentional with your recovery. You can't lay down. You wasted too much time already. You got to start putting some things in action. There's going to be some delayed gratification. Y'all hear me well. It's going to be some delayed gratification when it comes down to relationships trying to rebuild, because sometimes you don't know where you've messed up, and you got to be patient with one another. The very thing that you skipped over a long time ago, that thing is right back before you again. You start off even in new relationship, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have to be patient with one another. There needs to be a level of compatibility. This time we're going to talk about things. We're going to talk about what money looks like. We're not going to be afraid to talk about money. You know, whether it's where we live and how much we paying out. Do we put budgets together? You know, are we putting budgets together? You know, whatever. I thought you were saying see you later, leaving, but putting budget together. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, don't be afraid to talk about nothing. And when I say nothing, nothing. I even let them know I don't want no broke man. I do not. It's too much of a struggle. It's too much. They're struggling all the time. And when I mean broke, I'm not talking about financial broke. I'm not talking about just financial broke. I'm talking about broken your spirit. You got a broken spirit. You can't see yourself getting back up again. My husband and I discussed so many things before we married. He didn't like this, like dusting, and I don't like mopping. 30 years later, he don't dust and I don't mop. I like that. That's good. Oh, you were telling him bye. That's a good one there. And I'm telling you, those are things that you have to get, you know, out on the table and, you know, be able to say, hey, I like you, but I don't like the way you leave that stuff laying around right there. You know, or, you know, it may be a little something like, you know, I like you, but you got a little inconsistency going on. You know, we got some good chemistry and we got some, you know, some good things going on besides this little thing you got going on. But I just want to bring it to you as a little bit of inconsistency with you. I'd like for you to pick the pace up with that because that thing is going to bite us in the butt eventually because I'm going to be dependent on you for something one day and you may not come through. Similar lifestyle. Do we tell the truth about things or do we lie to each other? You know, is that our way of getting by? We lie to each other about things. We lie about hard matters, all because we don't want to hear the other person fuss. I'd rather let them go ahead and fuss and get it over with than try to hide it. You know, when I was telling y'all today about Brene Brown, that book she's got, she's dealing with shame. Man, when I tell that book explains a lot of things why people act like they do, you know, and sometimes you gotta open up and talk about maybe the things that cause discomfort in a person's life. Why, you know, like say for instance, if you're talking to somebody and they got real quiet on you, you may need to ask the question, hey, I noticed you got quiet right there. Was there a pause that was there? And if it was, what was the pause there? See, you can get people talk more at the beginning than you can later on. It matters how you start a thing. You may think, well, I ain't gonna ruffle the feathers right now. We'll talk about it later. No. You need to talk about it at the door so that you can let them know that's the type of person that you are, that you like communication. You like this oneness, this togetherness. You like emotional intimacy. We want to talk about a line and I go. Don't start talking about it later on. Because now they may think, oh, it must be a problem. We didn't talk about that a long time ago. And sometimes shame can come in there because they thought they skipped over something. They thought that they got away with something. And now that that thing is in front of them, they don't always know how to deal with it. You want to talk about it at the door. Another thing is our conflict resolution styles, compatibility. You know, how do we spell relief with things? You know, how do you handle disagreements? Do you just hang up on people? You know, all right then, you know, or it's a bunch of folk got that thing, click, they just hang up on you. And it's rude, you know, and then they get mad because you didn't call them back about anything. Okay, I'm not looking for somebody that's immature. That compatibility with that often requires similar approaches to problem solving and compromise. Sometimes that could be as simple as, you know, maybe you when you start talking about conflict, that normally involves something that's hard to talk about or something that we're in disagreement with. You know, how do we handle it? It may be something like, hey, let's table that for later. If you really don't have a peaceful thought or you haven't thought through things, you know, as much as you need to get a good response or get good conversation with it, let's pin that for another time. Now, you don't pin it for another time and don't ever go back and talk about it. We're going to pin that for later. And then this is another thing. Look to see if y'all compatible emotionally you have emotional a connection to where the next day this one of y'all bring it up and have the conversation, the conflict resolution. Because sometimes conflict is hard when people got a lot of stuff on their mind, when they dealing with bills, and and I think it's very important, ladies, that you know the nature of a man. There's some things you just don't have conversations with them with all the time, and one of them is bills. If you're going to talk about bills with them, you got to, when you're in relationships, singles, you got to start talking about how do you handle conflict. Like, say for instance, if something gets behind and look like the finance is not coming in, when would you like to talk about these things? Don't wait until y'all get in trouble and start having that conversation. Talk about that before something happens. When would you like to discuss that? See, God is going to give women an intuition when something is not going right. Your husband gets a little quiet, he gets a little distant or whatever. You need to have a level of emotional intelligence with you to know something is off key. All right, so it's 2 months down the line. I know we got finances here right now. We already talked about that. Let's go back in and readjust some things. How do we handle that conflict? How do we handle when things are not going right? And the earlier you talk about it, I promise you it'll be better on the other side. Sometimes we have this thing about, well, I already know they're going through a lot. I don't want to bring no stuff to them. No, it's when you bring it to them. They need to know it. It's just about when you bring it to them. Conflict resolution, or do you just fly off the gate and just get the fussing about stuff, and you told me this, you told me that, and what you have the language of where you came from. When it comes down to relationships, you have to learn a language of the two of you. That's why it's good for you to get prepared in the season to know who you are. To know when you clapping back too much, or know when you're not being patient, or you irritable, you got some other things going on. You want to bring that thing to to an understanding with yourself first. What is really going on with me with that? Do we have we fussed about something? Was that really what we were fussing about? And why are we using the word fussing? We conversating about something. Anytime you get into, you feel like it's fussing, anything, back up out of it. God said he's not the author of confusion with different things. And then there needs to be a level of trust and respect also when we talk about compatibility. This involves, do you both respect each other's boundaries? One of y'all like space. One of y'all like to get out with the girl, want to get out with the guy. Do y'all trust each other's space? Or do you go back and check through their stuff to see if they doing what they said they were doing? Y'all, I got this pet peeve about these folks that give folk their location. You in a relationship with somebody and they got your location, you dating them and they got your location. Why? Why are y'all setting up that type of a rhythm with one another? Well, I just want to prove to them that I'm not doing nothing. No, that's distrust already at the door. You should not have to be, you share your location for safety purposes, not for people to keep up with you and fill a place or a void with them. You may not even be the one for them. And you over there falling into some trap they got going on. I need to know your location at all times. No, you don't need to know my location at all times. That's an insecurity that you got going on within yourself. Now, if I'm going somewhere out of town and, I need definitely to be, accounted for, that's a different story. But just having my location, just to have my location, and then you want to ask all these questions about where I've been, all of that. No, there needs to be a level of trust and a level of respect. Trust is going to be the backbone to compatibility. We don't have no trust. How can two walk together if they're not agreeing with something? You always think something's going on, and I'm telling you, ain't nothing going on. And we got this conflict thing going. It's just not good. A lack of trust. Another thing is your communication style. Do you understand and appreciate each other's way of expressing their thoughts and their emotions? You take too long to talk. When we gonna talk about that? That's not compatibility. That you got to learn a person's communication style. You got to take into consideration how they were raised, the experiences that they've had in life. Everybody don't, communicate the same. Some people are very passive about a lot of things. You don't want to use passivity as an approach to communicating, but that is some people's language of communication, and you have to be ready to help them get out of that. Remember, when it comes down to finding true relationships, it needs to be a win-win for both of us. We need to have something in common with each other to where we want to make each other's life better in some kind of way. That means I don't harp on you about not communicating when I think you ought to. You ought to get to know each other better than that. If you still at that phase where, why you didn't call me back and all that kind of stuff, either you still too early in the relationship and you need to make some decision if that's not something that you want to keep doing, or you need to be patient a little bit so that they can catch on to the rhythm, of the relationship. And then there may be individuals that they're used to talking all the time and they don't really give the other person an opportunity to talk. There needs to be a place to where we learn communication styles to where take a breather, take a pause, let the other person join into the conversation, because that's the only way we're going to work together. Because I can't sit around and listen to you all day long about what's going on with you. There needs to also be a place where you have compatibility with your friendships. I don't like your friends. That's just like saying you don't like their parents. And I've seen that happen too. You like the mate, but you don't like their parents. That, to me, that's one of the craziest things in the world. And I know people do it every day. But that's a part of the heartbeat of you. How they like you and they don't like your family. You got to make that make sense to me. There needs to be a place where we have, enjoyment, some compatibility with our families. We may not do things alike, but we have a respect that's there, unless you don't respect them. And most of the time people piggyback off of what they see you doing, the energy you have with them, And if you don't have no respect to your family, I have enough of mine. We got some trauma bonds going on, and that ain't gonna work. We need to be compatible, not only just with that, we need to be compatible with God's word also. Having mutual understanding for one another, where you've been in life, how life been working for you, different things like that. It ain't just enough to have chemistry, y'all. You also need to be able to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's something in relationships that I think is very important, is that your personalities and skills balance each other out. I think it's a beautiful thing to have one person strong in one area where the other person is weak, but y'all recognize where they are. You need to complement each other. And sometimes you need to, this is something that I think is very important also. There are some people, their love languages are very important to them. Like their love language is affirmation, and you always talking down to them. You already killed that cat when affirmations are their love language. They give you all the compliments in the world, but you always put them down. You tell them all things they do wrong, but they're always telling you things you do right and how much you mean to them. That's not gonna last long, because you're gonna wear them down after a while. Where my strengths are and you're weak at, we need to talk about that. I like the way you did that. Even when I'm not consistent with it, I like the fact that you're consistent. All of this is a love factor, y'all. Singles, let's talk. Let's talk love and relationship. Loving yourself as you love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's what really this thing is all about. I can have chemistry, but chemistry ain't gonna last if you don't have no compatibility with each other. Another one is healthy communication. I think I want to close on that one. Healthy communication and forward movement. There needs to be a level of respect when you're talking to one another. Okay? And we need to have a mutual agreement on this, that we do not cross the line. We do not hit below the belt. We do not use words to call them outside of a name that was given to them. Some people feel like that's okay. They can do it. It ain't no big old deal. I don't know how people do it and still respect one another. You need to have healthy communication, and those healthy communication that encourage listening, and it encourages good feedback also. You have to start thinking about those kinds of things. I don't think people really have healthy communication in relationships. That's why a lot of times you can't rebuild the relationship because we don't know how to talk to one another. I think sometimes we've been in a relationship so long to where we disrespect one another, and we do things when we want to do it. And so that doesn't always come off well. But having healthy communication with each other. And the last one, having forward momentum. Both parties are equally committed to growing the relationship. If you want it to work, thank you, Miss Gigi. If you want it to work, y'all have to have some type of forward momentum. Ain't nobody talking about leaving. You want people that have consistency, that don't throw in the towel with every little thing. They running away from everything. You check that stuff at the door. And remember I told you, when people come in there for a reason, a season, a lifetime, people that come in for a reason, they're not going to tolerate much at all. They had their reason for coming in. They're not going to stay there when things get tough and rough. Somebody that's for a long haul, they have a little bit more elasticity with them. They don't just give up so quickly with things. And I think these are some things that we all need to adopt in our lives. When it comes down to relationships that we are, pursuing or encountering or wanting to be a part of, make sure you got some good chemistry that's there, because you're going to need that. I got to find something that I'm interested in with you. You make me laugh, make me smile, you do it, whatever case may be. Need to be an emotional connection. There needs to be a physical attraction. Got to be something. That's what you meet at the door. And when I meet those things at the door, what will happen later on, chemistry and compatibility comes together, and we can probably jump some stuff out there. We have decided that I'm not just there because you look good. I'm not just there because you got a smooth walk or a smooth talk. We got some other things in common. That is a thing that will keep me coming. And with that chemistry, you got to make sure you keep up whatever it is you're starting. You can't just start it and then that's where it was a long time ago. And, ain't like that no more. Things ain't like that no more. You got to start thinking about what you want for the long haul. And if that's what you want, you got to work at it each and every day. Amen. Well, that's my word for tonight. I hope and pray that, this helped you guys a little bit, through some things that you may be navigating through, and just know without a shadow of a doubt that, when you decide, because a lot of people have not decided just yet that they really want to be in a relationship, you still working on a relationship with yourself, and it's okay to do that. I think you need to stay in that space where you are until you get comfortable with making sure that you are really, really pursuing something that's going to be compatible. It's the same thing with your jobs, your church, whatever. Find the right chemistry that you need in those places, and there's an automatic spark that's going to take this. It's going to kick you. I think that's what the Holy Ghost comes to do. It'll kick you off with it. It'll let you know that there's something we have in common with each other. Now you have to put some of these other ingredients together. Like, do you have something? You have something in common with each other, and if you do, make those things work for you. Amen. Well, that's my word tonight. I pray that you guys be blessed by the message, and that you guys just kind of go back and think about it a little bit. And because these are things that I've had to do too. I've had to go back and, think about, what it is that I want, what I want to do, how I want to do it, who I want to do it with, because sometimes you could be doing the right thing with the wrong somebody. And that's just as bad, so we want to go back and check the records with things. Well, y'all, that's it for today. I hope you guys will be blessed. I look forward to coming back in with you guys on tomorrow morning for morning motivation so that we can continue on with the other conversations. Amen. Well, you guys be blessed. Have a wonderful Wednesday night. Get y'all some rest. I think that's what I'm fixing to do, to give me some rest, get back up, and get ready to do life again. Amen. Well, you guys be blessed and have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. In Jesus' name, amen.